Fantastic. So here we are, Huntily Yours, a podcast for the paranormal. I'm DC O'Rourke, your ever fabulous host. This segment I call Paranormal Corner. I bring on special guests from the paranormal field to share their valuable insights, their stories, their experiences with all of us. Tonight I have Stephanie Bingham, who is actually a paranormal historian. She's also a psychic and a medium. She's made numerous television appearances. She's spoken at lectures. She's been to Paracons and much, much more. I'm very excited to have her here in the Paranormal Corner and learn a little bit about her and see what all she can share with me about the paranormal. Stephanie, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, beyond the shadow of a doubt. So I am going to just jump straight into it, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Tell me. I've been through and I've watched some of your previous interviews on YouTube and things like that. How did you get? How did you and the paranormal first cross paths? The very first instance.
The very first instance that I know of happened when I was about 1.5 years old. One of my sort of distant relatives had died and had been to a funeral, and I really didn't know what was going on. But I was staying at my grandparents' house in a playpen. I was sleeping, and a gentleman came into the room through the window, came over, picked me up out of the playpen, and he and I had a conversation. And that's all that happened. I didn't think anything of it. You know, you're 1.5 years old. Sure, that can totally happen. That's normal, right?
Sure.
So this happened, told my mother. She was like, okay, and sort of sent me on my way. And that continued to happen. The gentleman would come in through the window, no matter where I was at, he'd come in through the window, sit, talk to me, and then go away. And after a while of that happening, my mother finally was getting the idea that something was going on that was a little more than a weird dream. And she found a group family photo that had a bunch of our relatives in it and asked if anybody in the picture was familiar. And I picked out the gentleman who was walking through the windows at night, and it was the man who had died. I'd never met him before when he was alive, so he was just coming to see me after he was dead. So at that point, my parents realized that I was seeing dead people. They didn't tell me, though. So I had no concept that I was seeing dead people until late elementary, early middle school. Somewhere in that range is when I sort of finally realized in my own mind that I was seeing dead people. But they knew from very early on what was going on, and that's the first time I have evidence of it. But I assume since it started so early, I was seeing them all along and just didn't realize or have the ways to vocalize it before that.
Interesting. So now I have to ask, how did your parents deal with this? I mean, did they kind of go, okay, whoa, how do we deal with Stephanie here and, not tell her the truth?
Mm-hmm.
I know every parent's different with stuff like this.
They are. So luckily for me, I wasn't the only one who had seen this particular family member after he died. Another members had. So they were like, yeah, so multiple people in the family are seeing the same thing. It's fine. But my parents really took the sort of, I could tell them the stories, that was fine, but they weren't going to push me about it. They didn't say they were dead, didn't say I was wrong, just, okay, and sent me on my way. That was very much their approach to all the ghosts. I wasn't afraid of them, so there wasn't a problem.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, I think it's very common for parents, especially depending on their upbringing, to kind of shun children in this regard. Like, oh no, my child's crazy. let's go see the nearest shrink, and before you know it, you've got a whole set of new problems.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you have for a potential parent in a situation where their child is either a psychic or a medium, either or both?
If the child is not afraid of what they're seeing, just allow them to have the interactions and keep note of it. If you're nervous about it or worried about it, keep track of it. See if there's a pattern in the behavior. See if you can confirm anything they're saying from outside sources so you can tell that their information is good. Do things like that. If you need to take them to a doctor about it to make yourself feel better, do that, but understand that the child is still experiencing something and you don't want to make them afraid of something that they aren't afraid of if they aren't at that point. If the child
Exactly.
if the child is having issues where they're afraid of something, reach out to someone who is a medium or a psychic themselves. It's generally the best way of going about it, and sort of it's easier to talk them through it. But one of the things I always tell parents, especially if it's a small child, the easiest way for me to explain how I deal with ghosts is by energy work. Like, I can manipulate them to some extent by using the energy around me and the energy that they are created by. And you can
Mm.
sort of set up boundaries, like how you get rid of a ghost out of a house. So I'll oftentimes tell parents to find a special flashlight or a special water bottle and put a label on it. This is what this is. This is ghost away sprayer. This thing does this. So having the child have, especially the spray bottle, that's my favorite option for that, is literally the child believing their parent. So they are putting all of their will and all their focus. Their knowledge is this spray will get rid of the ghost and keep it out of my room. And that 9 times out of 10 will work on human spirits. So it's a very good way to empower your child and keep them from getting more and more amped up. And generally that works. That's my favorite sort of quick solution for a human spirit that's irritating a child.
Yeah, I absolutely adore that idea. I'm totally going to steal it, by the way. if
Do it.
Yeah, if I ever come across a parent, who is in need of a solution like that, because I'll be flat out honest. More often than not, I get friends who have children that reach out to me and go, "Denny, my daughter just said that she saw a little blonde girl crawling up the wall, and I don't know how to deal with it. Do I tell her she's seeing things, or do I just play along?" And sometimes I'll be honest, I never know what to exactly tell these people, but I just say, if she's not scared, let her have fun.
Yeah.
You know, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, until there's an absolute need to worry that there's an entity in your house that is trying to do harm to your child, then let them be. I
Exactly.
mean, yeah, I mean, even if the spirit is another child, they're
Mm-hmm.
still a child,
Yeah.
and they just want to play. At
Exactly.
least in my experiences.
Yeah.
Um,
I've met some kids that weren't actually kids, so sometimes it gets a little dicey in there, but if the kid feels safe, don't scare them unnecessarily. I can't wrap my brain around that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm going to share something with you about myself now. When I was very young, I was very close with my grandfather, and he passed away 2 days before my 13th birthday. And I remember being very, very devastated by this. And I distinctly remember 2 days after we buried him. I don't know why. It was 2 days before and then 2 days after. I woke up in this dream, and I felt like it was more than a dream. I couldn't quite explain it, but I'm looking around this white room. It's incredibly bright lights, and it seemed like it went on for miles. And I start walking along, and I get all the way toward the end, and somebody starts calling out to me, and it's my grandfather. And he says, come over, and I go all the way over to him. I say, what happened? Why am I here? And he says, forget all that. I didn't get a chance to tell you goodbye. I just wanted to tell you how much I love you and I hope you have a good life. And I woke up,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I was in absolute tears, and I went to my mom and I told my mom about it. She said, "Oh, you're crazy. It's your brain playing tricks on you. There's no way." But at 13 years old, I knew there was something more to this. I could feel it and I couldn't shake it. So I went to my reverend at the local church. I talked to numerous family members, and finally I talked to my grandmother, and I told her about it. And she said, "Well, it's funny because the last thing your grandfather said before he died was, 'Did you have a chance to talk to Denny today?'" He had been very sick, and he and I hadn't seen each other in a couple weeks. But anyway, long story short, I thought that was kind of a one-off instance. And over time, I've had other people come and go from my life, and I've encountered them in dreams with some sort of message for me specifically. Yeah, I had a friend who committed suicide. I woke up in his house and he asked me to get in touch with his sister. And then he stepped into this white light and disappeared. And then there was another instance where I learned another friend had passed away, and he was in this like outdoor like workhouse type setting. Everybody was dressed in great jumpsuits, coming and going, doing various tasks. And he told me I didn't belong there and I needed to get out. And I've always wondered, is there the possibility that I could have some sort of psychic abilities going on? But my mother, from a very young age, kind of course, being the mom that she was, it was like, oh, you're crazy, just wrote me off altogether. What do you think?
So psychic abilities come in a variety of flavors, if you will. I can really think of them like,
Okay.
Strawberry, chocolate, whatever you're doing.
Sure.
And everyone has a different sort of mixture of psychical talents that sit in the box that say, hey, I do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the more traditional psychic I see dead people stuff, and some of it is like people who are empaths. They feel things from other people, but they don't necessarily think of that as a psychic talent, or even being able to ward off against spirits, like having that really nice, strong bond around them. That's a type of psychic too. So I would absolutely say that that's exactly what's happening here. And I would say you're more on the side of the lucid dreaming, things like that, being able to control
Okay.
and transit through dreams more so than having something that is as forward facing as mine, if it is.
Yeah. Now, I mean, in recent years, I have been, I feel like, seeing spirits more so than normal. I see like energy forms. That's the best way I can describe it. And I get the feeling, say somebody's in the room with me, and I turn around and I can definitely see an energy form like walking around me. And
Mhm.
I know in the back of my mind there's someone there with me. And, I've found myself in a few different situations where I've, physically captured an EVP, just to kind of clarify, okay, you're not crazy, Denny. Somebody's actually in the room with you.
Yeah.
I work at a nursing home during the day, and sometimes I find myself in empty rooms going, okay, somebody's here with me, and I'll take out my phone and turn on the recorder, ask a couple of questions, and when I get responses.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Now I'm curious. I hear people say psychic. I hear people say medium. I hear some people say psychic medium. What's the difference?
So psychic is sort of a broad overarching term for people who have extrasensory perception of some sort or the other. Be it
Okay.
empath, be it seeing dead people. It's a catch-all term, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
for that extra sense you have. A medium, if I'm going back to the original definition of it, and that's what I tend to do because I have background in history, a
Mm-hmm.
medium is exactly what it sounds like. It is someone who can use their body as a medium for the other side to communicate through, be it as some form generally of a transitory sort of possessory state where somebody
Mm-hmm.
else can speak through or write through their body. I can act as a medium. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like to act as a medium. I don't share well when it comes to having extra souls in my body. I don't do it well. But
Yeah.
some people are very, very good at that. Especially there's some very talented trans mediums out there who can actually allow things to come in and out and control that process entirely. But that is, in my mind, the big definition between a psychic and a medium.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I never know. I encounter, more and more people nowadays. They go, "Oh, I'm a psychic," or "I'm a medium," and some say, "I'm a psychic medium." So, I said, I bet you Stephanie would be the perfect person to ask. Get some overall clarification on this.
In general, that's what I see happening for that delineation, but some people
Mhm.
will claim other things, and good for them.
Good for them, exactly. To each their own, I guess.
Right.
Very good. Now, tell me, I guess while we're still briefly in the same vein, um, what was it like going to school once you learned you were a medium and you had psychic abilities? How did your teachers and your fellow students act?
So, fun fact, most of the kids I was in school with knew before I did
Oh,
because I was very bad at hiding it, and they just thought I was crazy. It's how it was.
huh,
And
right.
I went to the same school with these kids from kindergarten through 12th grade. I mean, it's a small town, it's in Kentucky, it's very Bible belty. So I remember being told that I'd sold my soul to the devil. I was chased down a hall with a Bible by a girl one day,
Oh,
um, called Spawn of Satan, all sorts of stuff. It was great. You know,
wow.
kids are
Yeah,
cool. You just
yeah.
eventually learn to ignore them. That's all you can do. They don't understand. But I wasn't the only one in my school, so that was a very helpful little thing. Is when you're not the only freak at the school, if you will.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I imagine, like most schools, there were cliques,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere you could easily fit in. I mean, I was kind of caught between the outsiders and the I guess what you would call the stoners, even though I didn't smoke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just was like, I feel comfortable going back and forth between these two groups. And I
Yep.
mean, people looked at me funny, but I didn't
Right.
feel like as big of a freak. But yeah, anyway, to each their own, as I said before. Now, as time went on in school, obviously, I'm guessing you found some sort of love of history.
Mm-hmm.
And as you progressed further in your education, you got into college, you decided, I need to be a paranormal historian.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how did that come about?
So I wanted to give myself context. I wanted to
Mhm.
prove to myself by documentable, like I have the documents, I know it was there, proof that I was not the first one to experience this. I wanted to
Yeah.
prove that there was a long history of people who had communicated with spirits in various cultures around the world because I have dual degrees. I have history and anthropology. And in anthropology, there's the idea of sort of a cultural and overarching truth between cultures. And if you can find it in enough other places, then it's considered a fact. So I had it in my head at the time, if I can find enough cultures that have this same idea of contacting spirits and speaking with spirits and people acting as mediums between them, then I can prove it as an anthropological fact or a historical fact to myself. So it was really about finding context for me, is why that's what I went into. And I
Yeah.
had a professor tell me I couldn't do it, so of course it's exactly what I did.
Right. That's so cool, though. I mean, my hat is off to you. I mean, I know my professors would have been like, "Whoa, Denny, no way," and I would have been like, "Okay." But yeah, that's so awesome. So, what were your because you said double major, obviously. So, what were your theses on?
So in undergraduate, I had a thesis on ancient Egyptian religious practices. I had a
Hmm.
thesis on voodoo and the spiritualist movement. And then in grad
Ooh.
school, it was the spiritualist movement, specifically their mediums and how they use that to overcome their everyday places in life. So the spiritualist female mediums.
Oh, okay. That's good. I actually I'm very familiar with I guess that topic overall as a whole. I will admit I'm a little obsessed with Harry Houdini, so I know he went through at one point and did
Yeah.
his best to kind of bring down all the fakes
Yeah.
and find some concrete proof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Sad story. I mean, he told his wife, oh, when I die, I'll cross over and pierce the veil, and she waited around forever
Wow.
and never got that message that she was looking for. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic.
You're good.
I, I could easily do that. As a paranormal historian, I'm curious. What are some of your favorite locations, historic locations that you've been to and investigated, and just overall used your abilities at?
There's so many. I really liked Mansfield Reformatory. That one was really interesting. Had a lot of interesting history and a lot of interesting weirdness there.
Okay.
Williamsburg, Virginia. That's one you don't
Hmm.
hear about often with the paranormal, or at least where I'm
Hmm.
at. That one has some really interesting things floating around in it. And then I feel like the farther afield you go, that still gets good traction, lots of people through there to feed the ghosts, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You find odd dead things in very strange places. One of the ones that always gets me is Mammoth Cave. The amount of things that are in Mammoth Cave fascinate me. I've never been able to truly investigate there, but that one is odd. It reminds
Yeah.
me very much of the Bell Witch Cave and the thing that lives inside it. Very much
Mm.
so. But I'm not quite certain what the connection is there.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to backtrack just a smidge. I didn't want to cut you off. You said Williamsburg, Virginia. So are we talking Colonial Williamsburg?
Yeah.
Ah, well, here's a fun fact. I am actually a ghost tour guide in Colonial Williamsburg.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
There and Jamestown both have this
Hmm.
odd, and I'm not sure if it's because of the traffic that amps it up so much there. There's so many people coming through there so often, but that one, even more so than traditional haunted places like Waverly Hills, it's haunted. It's got weird stuff in it.
Hmm.
But that place seems more real to me. Williamsburg always felt more real to me there. And I don't know
Oh
why.
yeah. Yeah, I've been telling ghost stories for the past 5 years there.
Mm-hmm.
I actually used to work for the foundation as a historical interpreter and a ghost storyteller for several years. And then I left there and then turned around, went to work for another company telling ghost stories, and now I'm back again.
Well, there you
And-
go.
yeah, and the group I work with, I do the Extreme Ghost of Williamsburg tour,
Ooh.
so yeah, I get to play with a spirit box and dowsing rods and all the good fun stuff. But it amazes me every single night how sociable the spirits will be at some of these
Mm-hmm.
locations, and people just look at me dumbfounded and going, "Oh, is this actually happening?" And and I think it's at the point now where the spirits here come looking for me
Yeah.
every single time I'm here because they know they can talk to me. And it's like I almost have like a friendly rapport with them. It's like a few nights ago, and I'll make this a very short story. I finished up a tour. It was 2 days before Christmas, and we were asking the spirits if they were excited for Christmas because there were two spirits of little girls there,
Mm-hmm.
and they were saying that they were very excited. And I said, "Well, you know what? Maybe we should sing a Christmas carol." And they said, "Oh, yes." And everyone looked at me like, "Denny, are you really going to make us sing to the spirits?" And I said, "Why not?" And I asked them. I said, "Okay, do you want to hear Jingle Bells or Winter Wonderland?" And they both said Winter Wonderland back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And a little boy in my group, he said, "Could we sing We Wish You a Merry Christmas?" And I said, "Let me ask the spirits."
Mm-hmm.
And I asked, and they said, "Yes, please." So me and 13 people totally sang We Wish You a Merry Christmas with the spirit box going for the spirits. And at the end, I asked them, I said, "Did you enjoy that?" They said, "Yes, very much."
Mm-hmm.
And we all wished them a Merry Christmas. And I mean, everybody walked away just going, "Oh."
Well, I believe it.
I mean, it was one of those experiences, and trust me, I've seen and dealt with a lot in my time, much like you have.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had anything like that. It was such a profound moment for me, and I was glad that I could offer them that little slice of happiness there in that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah,
People forget that ghosts were people too. I mean, they really do.
yeah, hmm yep. I stress that on tours all the time. It was like, what do I say? How do I talk to them? I'm like, they're people. Talk to them. Don't treat them like circus monkeys going, "Turn on my flashlight, turn it
Mm-hmm.
off, turn it on, turn it off." Because I mean,
Move an object.
I right, exactly. I distinctly remember a tour where I had a 19-year-old kid who was like, "Hey, blow out the candle, light up the EMF meters, cross the dowsing rods," just being a dunce.
Yeah.
And a distinct male voice came across the spirit box and said, "We're dead." And I went, "He's got a point."
He does.
He
Very good point.
he really does. Uh, people never cease to amaze me sometimes. I mean, you they just see all these ghost hunting shows like Ghost Adventures and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, I'm going to be like Zach Baggins and I'm going to talk to ghosts. No, no, doesn't
It's
work like that.
and they don't realize how much energy it takes for a ghost to do a physical movement like that.
Hmm.
Most
Oh yeah.
don't have that to play with.
Yep. Yeah. Uh, hmm. I sigh.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So you mentioned Waverly Hills a couple of minutes ago. Um, Love that place, by the way. And I know you're from Kentucky. Can I assume that you've been there before?
Multiple times.
Multiple times.
Multiple
Uh,
times.
I envy you. I've only been there once. So tell me about Waverly. I mean, what did you pick up on when you were there?
So Waverly is an odd place. Every
Hmm.
time I've been there, because it has so much traffic year round, there's always lots of sort of transient spirits in there. But when I've actually been in there looking around, I have never once seen a spirit in there or communicated with one that was actually a patient at Waverly Hills. I've seen
Really? Huh.
things in there that are drawn to the energy, the fear, especially from the haunted houses, that
Mhm.
stay there to feed on that. But those aren't people. They never were people, never will be people. They just hang out. They're cool, they're creepy, they're willing to play games with people. So they're
Mhm.
fun. But I've never seen a patient at Waverly. Now, at Waverly's sister site in Louisville that was torn down several years ago, it's out in the woods if you know where to find it.
Mhm.
There's people there because it doesn't have the same sort of traffic. So you don't have the inhumans there that have come to feed. So there's still some people out there, but not at Waverly. But it's a really
Yeah.
good place for sort of that repeatable evidence.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
had the ceiling and the body chute fall on my head last time I was down there, so that was always
Oh, what? No way.
fell off.
Oh. Oh, wow.
Took that as my sign that I was done with the body chute for the day.
Yeah, I would have taken that sign and gone.
Right?
I would have ran those couple hundred steps up back to the top.
It was only
Oh,
about half
wow.
better.
Yeah, yeah. I spent the night there back in 2018,
Mm-hmm.
which was it was such an amazing experience. You know, this place was high up on my bucket
Yeah.
list of places to investigate, and I went in not knowing what to expect. You know, I had an open mind. I had grounded myself and everything, and the entire night I was just feeling things, you know, to the point where the hairs were raising up on my arms. And I too spent some time in the body chute.
Mm-hmm.
I walked all the way down to the bottom by myself in the dark, and I sat there, and you know, I ran to the digital voice recorder, and I could see like figures moving through the dark coming toward me. And then I started hearing whispers, and I said, okay, I feel like I'm not welcome here anymore, so it's probably a good idea if I go.
Yeah.
But the rest of the night was really interesting, you know, and I was kind of eavesdropping on different paranormal teams that were in there
Mm-hmm.
investigating, you know, doing like spirit box sessions and stuff like that. Like I think one group claimed that they had made contact with the doctor who impregnated the nurse in room 502.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were asking him, you know, why he did what he did because he supposedly killed her and all this stuff. Obviously, there are many different stories there, but yeah, yeah, it was a cool night. I got a really awesome picture of what I believe is a doctor in a white lab coat. Um, oh yeah, it's like mind blowing. Whenever I show it to people, they think it's a painting. They're like, "Oh no, you manipulated that." I'm like, "No." I was in the operating room at one point,
Yeah.
and the tour had left me, and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna just snap a few photos." Here I am snapping photos. I feel like somebody walked past me, and I said, "That's weird." I looked behind me, and then I heard a voice say, "What do you want?" And I said, I'm just here taking photos. You know, don't mind me, just taking photos." And I took some photos in the general direction. I felt the presence. Went back to the hotel the next morning. I started looking through the photos, and I went, "Oh, I mean, because there was this guy, clear as day, with his back to me in a white lab coat with short brown hair, and I was thinking, okay, is this a doctor? Is this a nurse? I mean, who is he?
Hmm.
But unfortunately, I never got to find out.
In my experience there, that operating room and the hallway, like the 10 feet of that hallway directly outside of it, is the best place to make contact with the Inhumans that I have met there. That is the
Yeah,
place I've always felt like that is their home
right.
base.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember the tour guide that night was telling us how there were a lot of inhuman entities there, and some people even have made reports of demons being there. Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you on that one. I mean, I spent 2 hours in the mortuary. I climbed into the old freezer
Hmm.
and got
Yeah.
in on the drawer, and I laid there for 2 hours, going, "Okay, demons, where are you?" And I had nothing
Yes.
happen. Yeah, I mean, I walked out of there just fine. So, all right, pushing Waverly Hills to the side. So in Mysteries Decoded, one of
Yes.
your TV appearances, season one, episode one, you
Hmm.
actually got to go to the Lizzie Borden house,
Yeah, both
and what's up?
both of
Both
the
of them. Ooh, oh, okay. Enlighten me. How was that?
So we went to Maplecroft first, which was Lizzie's
Hmm.
house later in life. And that was the first night we got there, and I was going in there and this TV, we're doing our whole little thing and going through the house and getting the history and sort of getting a feel for it. And they decided let's try and talk to someone if there's anybody here.
Yeah.
And the only person at the house, well, the only person willing to talk at the house was Lizbeth, which is what Lizzie went by after her parents' murder. She actually changed her name to Lizbeth. It's what she's actually buried under and things like that.
Okay.
And so we sat and we had a conversation with Lizzie Borden at her manor house that she lived in after the murder took place. And that was not what I expected. It was very much not what I expected. I was expecting, you hear stories of Lizzie Borden and how crazy she was and all these things she's done and, just evil, evil Lizzie Borden. She was a lady of her time, very
Mhm.
much a lady of her time. She she was very set on protocol, very set on certain things that she wanted done, how she wanted done, very unwavering in that. But if you spoke to her as a lady, she would return that as a lady, at least to me. I could see where maybe if you come at her aggressively or from the wrong direction, you might get a very angry spirit. But she was composed and she was calm and she was even tempered the entire time, talking about her house and how she likes it and just things like that. She had one of her dogs there with her. She had one of her grooms with
Oh,
her. I mean, it's a thing.
yeah.
She was very happy in that life that she had, isolated but happy. So that was fascinating because that is not what I expected to find from Lizzie. But from there, we went back to the Borden house, the actual bed and breakfast where the murders took place.
Hmm.
And that yielded some very, very, very interesting evidence. We actually had a ghost hunting team come in to help us look around the place, and we had a entity in the Abby Borden murder house, which is the in the room where the bed where she was found actually dead on the floor. They
Hmm.
had an entity that was responding and doing as told on an SLS camera for over an hour, just sitting and responding. And of course, the TV crew's like, "Okay, we're good," and we're like, "No, no, 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 we're not done. just give us 5 more minutes. It's fine."
Yeah.
And that happened, and then we actually did a séance, actually sort of a channeling session, closer to that sort of mediumship, mild possessory state thing.
I
And
see.
I was expecting to talk to Mr. Borden. He was also there, but it was Mrs. Borden who was willing to talk. And Mrs. Borden was not what I was expecting at all. She was emotional, she was aggressive, she was borderline hysterical. Um, she loved the girls, she really did, but she didn't understand why they didn't love her. But she did something that I've only seen inhuman spirits do. She was forcing emotions. It's very hard to explain if you haven't felt it, but if you have any sort of empathic tendencies, you'll notice certain people are very able to push their emotions out and towards someone else.
Mhm.
Mrs. Borden knew that she could take my energy to make herself stronger. She knew that while talking through me. But she also seemed to realize that she could sort of push her emotions into me very aggressively. So I was very confused and surprised by that fact. And also she has 2 children with her. Not Lizzie and her sister, but she has 2 children, probably the ones from next door that were actually relatives who were murdered as children. But very odd. The entire thing was very odd.
Yeah, it seems like it. I'm just sitting here going, wow. I mean, my mind's kind of blown here. Um, Let me ask you, did Lizzie do it?
Yeah. I do not believe Lizzie did it. I
Yeah.
believe that Lizzie and her sister conspired with their uncle, who was their sister or their mother's brother, who had
Hmm.
came the night before to sign a deal for property and a job.
Mm.
The deal didn't get signed. Then the uncle uh, went out for the day, shall we say. And he went out for the day, and when he arrived back after the murders, he had memorized the first and last name of 6 people on a trolley, because that's normal, and then stood
Yeah.
outside for, by his estimation, an hour, eating peaches in the crowd, not asking anyone what was going on, just hanging out, because that's normal. And then he sort of skipped town.
Oh.
You know,
Hmm.
I think a much better suspect than the girls, but I do think that the girls conspired with him to kill their stepmother, not their father.
Wow. Interesting. I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm thinking, I feel like I've read this in a Stephen King book somewhere. I,
Yes.
I mean, it's so like juicy and twisted, and I feel like Lizzie Borden really needs some much needed justice. Somebody needs to like officially crack the case. I felt like that for a very long time. Um, I just hope I can get to investigate both of the houses one of these days myself, and
They're
hopefully make contact. Yeah.
they are
Um, Good to know. Good to know. I'll tuck that away in the back of my mind here. Oh, okay. So we're talking about all sorts of things here. Um, what are, if you had to pick, 3 historic sites with haunting roots that you would like to investigate one day?
the Winchester Mystery House,
Ooh, good one.
hands down, that one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, I would I would like to investigate. There was a murder. Like, I have a sort of a pet murder mystery thing that has always sort of fascinated me. It was a murder that took place at an Oklahoma Girl Scout camp where 3 little girls were murdered. And there was some question as to, once this all took place, whether or not a shaman had placed a curse and some other weirdness going on out that way. I would like to investigate that location because I think that there's probably something there.
Hmm.
And I would like to get the ability to go into Mammoth Cave and investigate the creepy crawlies that are down in that area.
That would be totally cool. Not going to lie. That would be awesome. All right, good choices. Good choices. I actually I covered the Winchester House in season 1 of the podcast. That was very, very cool going down that rabbit hole. And when I say a rabbit hole, oh
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Look out, White Rabbit. That's all I can say.
Don't follow anything in that house.
Yes, don't follow anything in that house. Lord, no, you might end up in an undiscovered room.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's totally wild. Now I'm curious. Obviously you've been brought into some of these historic sites. Have you ever gone into a place and had it just go terribly wrong for you?
Terribly wrong. Not, no.
No.
I've gone somewhere and had it go completely awry. I've gone to
Hmm.
places where what I was expecting to happen didn't happen.
Hmm.
I get called in more often than not on things that aren't people and worked people. So I go in with the mindset that this is going to go a little off the wall. That's just kind of
Sure.
what I go in thinking. I mean, I've had things thrown at me. I've been hit. I've been bitten. I've been pushed downstairs. I mean, I've had things like attack me, but I've never had the entire thing just go crazy.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, that's good at least.
Different.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious.
Yeah.
I know we're all different, and
Yeah.
me, unfortunately, I've been in some rather, how shall I put this, sticky situations. Where and with a small group of people to do an investigation, whether it's at a private residence or an actual historic location, and the entity that, or entities rather, don't want us there, and they do something that just sends everybody running for the hills. Um, like I distinctly remember one night I went to an abandoned nursing home in my hometown with a group of friends. We were amateur investigators at that point, and we went in not knowing what to expect, and everyone's like, "Okay, it's dead quiet," and then all of a sudden, we hear footsteps running across the ceiling overhead, and everyone's like, "Somebody's in the attic," and I said, "There's no attic," and the footsteps ran all the way down, and then I heard a heavy door slam, and I'm thinking, okay, where is all this coming from? But then at the end of the hallway, these two red eyes appeared out of nowhere, and I could clearly see the figure of a person there. And I basically said, okay, hey, we mean no harm. We're just here conducting an investigation. We want to document proof that you're here. And then whomever this was took off running toward us and then ran along the wall. And everyone flipped out. I mean, just left me standing there, because I'm always the guy that gets left in these types of situations. Something goes wrong, things hit the fan. Denny's the guy that gets left behind because he's friends with the ghosts. He can stay here and talk to them.
Makes sense. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, sure. I know. I think I dare say I should probably choose my friends more wisely in the future.
Or just be buddies with the ghosts. It'll be fine.
Or be buddies with the ghosts. Yeah.
Just them instead. It'll be fine.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, okay. So I'd like to know more about your process. Like when somebody calls you up, or they track you down to come to a location, how do you go about things?
It really depends on what the situation is. If it is a historic location that is looking to say, hey, do we have the basis for a ghost tour here? Then I'm going to go in sort of blind and see what I can find, see who it is, and see if I can confirm what they're saying in the proper way of, like, I'm going to get this information from the ghost, write it all down, go research it. Can I match it up? Is it real? Basically. If it is somebody who has a psychic kid that's got something going on, that's not the game we're playing anymore. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to do all my research in advance, get everybody's stories in advance, and I'm going to go in there with the intention of either removing the spirit one way or the other, or calming the situation down. But generally, if a group brings me in, it's because they've already done several layers of investigation, and they think, generally, I have a demon in my house, or I have a demon in my location, and I'll go in saying, why do you think you have a demon in your location? And they will give you the reasons, and generally those reasons point to something native or something other in human that's hiding out in the area. So basically that, and then I will go into the location, generally by myself or with another person, and sort of just feel it out and just track down the creature, because 9 times out of 10 they like to try and hide, because they're
Okay, interesting. Yeah, no. It totally does. It totally does. I'm trying to visualize you at work, going into these different locations.
Little flag walking in and saying, no, demon, you're leaving now.
Hey, right. You've got to do what you got to do. I mean,
right?
Yep. I mean, whatever works in the given situation. Yeah, I totally understand. Now, question, and I feel like it's the age-old question here. Why do spirits come back?
Why do human spirits come back?
Why do humans? Yeah, sorry, I should have clarified that.
So generally, human spirits come back if they have truly crossed over and they are coming back. They're coming back to see their family. They're coming back to see whatever it was that was there when they were alive that made them happy. So a location, an object, or a person, or a group of people. I used to work at museums, still kind of do.
Mhm.
And you find that they're very haunted. There's certain objects that have ghosts that are attached to them. They love that object, so they're coming back to see that. You find that in families. New babies show up, the ghosts are going to show back up. You know, they're coming to see the new child that has just arrived, things like that. So, human spirits, if they aren't trapped here, that's truly why, in my experience, they come back.
Okay, interesting. I always love hearing different people's theories because I feel like we all have our own. So yeah, that's super cool. Now, let me ask you, I'm totally picking your brain here. If you've got a spirit who's trapped or, they can't move on, how would you go about encouraging them to do so?
Depends on what it is. A lot of spirits that die in tragic situations, I've seen it on the
Mhm.
side of the road before in car accidents specifically. They get
Okay.
trapped in the moment of death, don't realize they're dead. And generally, given enough time, 2 weeks to a month, generally speaking, they
Hmm.
sort of come to terms with that and cross on their own. I have ran into encounters where there have been foul play, shall we say, that
Hmm.
led to multiple casualties, one and then the other, and one spirit will be holding the other. So, in order to get
Hmm.
the victim able to cross over, you have to remove the hold of the other one. So, that can be done in various manners, but you literally have to take that soul from feeding on the victim's soul and allow them to go through that natural process of passing on. Others you find are due to fear.
Hmm.
They're afraid of what's going to be on the other side. And that is generally a matter of finding a way to talk to them in their understanding. You need to know what they believe, what their beliefs were when they were alive. And I found that at times taking a priest of their particular flavor to them is
Hmm.
sometimes the best way to get them to cross because that sort of calms them down. But uh, I got one right now. I go to antique stores a lot. I'll pick up items that have people attached to them, you know.
Hmm.
Better they come home with me than with some rando, you know?
No, yeah,
And I've
sure.
got a little child here right now in his marbles. Like, he came with the marbles. He's 2 or 3, has no idea he's dead. Just wants to play with his marbles. Has no desire to cross over. So until he's
Yeah.
ready, he can sit on my bookshelf and he'll be fine. Um, and I find that that's the types that I see most often are the ones that are just they're technically trapped, but they are quite happy. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I've actually been looking at haunted dolls recently.
Uh huh.
Um, yeah, I've had several investigator friends tell me, "Oh yeah, meet Mabel." I got her a couple of years ago, and little did I know she's got this attachment, and
Mm-hmm.
they go on and tell me the full story, and then I got curious, and I've been going on like Etsy and eBay, and you wouldn't believe how many people are trying to sell haunted objects that aren't actually haunted.
Yep.
Uh, I mean, it's just absolutely nuts, and they're charging hundreds of dollars.
Yep.
I mean, just I, I I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. People never cease to amaze me.
They don't. I've heard of people that should know how to bind spirits actually
Hmm.
trying to bind spirits to objects to have them sellable and movable like that. So literally taking dead things and binding them to objects to sell for ghost on demand.
Ghosts on demand. Wow. Yeah, I'm going to shake my head.
That's all
Mm.
you can do at that point.
Yeah, I mean that's all you can do at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I've wondered about stuff like that because I guarantee you there are people who do that.
Yeah.
Just to make a buck, and it's awful. It's really awful. Shame. Now, I guess while we're kind of talking about this, Have you ever come across a spirit or another entity, whether human or inhuman, that's just scared the absolute hell out of you?
So the answer is yes, but not.
Hmm.
I have one experience that I talk about a lot where I was attacked by an inhuman spirit, and everyone thinks that's the scariest. It wasn't to me.
Hmm.
That's sort of the most dramatic experience, but the one that scared me the most happened when I was in high school. I was reading a book laying in bed, and a ghost came into the room. It feels funny when they enter.
Hmm.
Everything just feels different. And so I knew there was a ghost in the room. He came in, he sat down on the edge of my bed. I assumed it was my relative who I'd seen as my very first ghost. I thought it was him coming back. That's very much his MO, what he does. But this spirit proceeded to lay down on the bed next to me and wrap his arm around me, like just cuddle up against me.
Hmm.
I lost it. I was terrified.
Yeah.
That one got me. I went and sat in the bathtub because in my mind, the bathtub, they can't sit down. I can't feel it if he sits down next to me. Fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it made sense at the time. But that's the one that really got me. And I felt bad afterwards because I realized who it was. And he wasn't trying to be scary. He wasn't trying to be creepy. He was trying
Hmm.
to comfort me. And I was just like, bad approach. Just wrong way of going about that all the way.
Yeah.
That's what sticks with me is just like being terrifying to me. But, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that could have gone a lot worse.
absolutely could have. Absolutely
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
But
At least he had some boundaries, or
he,
it had some boundaries, I
he
should say.
did.
Yeah.
Also didn't hurt that I was essentially pushing out the energy around me to throw everything out of the building I was in, basically just sort of flailing energetically, if you will.
Yeah.
Because what else do you do in that situation but
Yeah, exactly. What can you do? Yeah.
freak?
Oh,
That's it.
freak. Yep. 100%.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I throughout the conversation you've mentioned inhuman spirits quite a bit. Who are they and where do they come from? Is there an answer even?
Um, so, in my research, I have come to the conclusion that every culture, pretty much worldwide, has their own explanation for the human spirits and the inhuman spirits. Everyone has different
Mhm.
names for them, different sort of attributions for them. In sort of that Western Christian culture, you have the idea of the demon and the angel. Those are your inhumans. If you
Okay.
go to Ireland, you have the Fae. If you
Hmm.
come over here, you have Fifale. You have all sorts of these like puckwedgies and all sorts of nature spirits and everything running around. All of these creatures, in my estimation, are relatives, if you will, of one another. Not the same thing, but they have some similar characteristics. And that's sort of where I get into some odd things when I go on investigations. People will tell me they have a demon in their house. Go in there. It's not a demon. What you have is a native spirit, something that the natives here may have worshipped or may have dealt with for hundreds of years, thousands of years. It's its home. You built your house on its home. I'm sorry. And you
Hmm.
need to sort of make friends with it, basically. You need to give it an offering of some sort to apologize for what you've done and come to agreement with it. Jinn are another one that also fall into this category of an inhuman spirit that is there and willing to make deals. Fairies, very much
Hmm.
the same way. Willing to make deals. Do not make deals with fairies or jinns, guys. It's not it's not safe. You cannot read all those lines.
Yeah.
And it gets very dicey because in my mind the easiest way to deal with a spirit is sort of the economy of motion idea. You want to do it in the simplest way possible. Could you get rid of a jinn using a Catholic priest if you're Catholic? Absolutely, you could. But you're going to be here for the next 6 years trying to convince this thing to leave you alone. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not a quick and easy solution to it. I believe in approaching, especially inhumans, from their own cultural belief. So if you have a jinn, you come at it from that perspective. If it thinks it's a demon, we're going the demon route. If it's
Hmm.
native, you're going through that route. So it's really sort of learning to deal with what you're dealing to interact with them appropriately so that you don't offend
Okay.
them and you don't run afoul of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, it totally does. I mean, I am all about peace and harmony. If they were here first, hey, we can get along just fine. I will try my best not to encroach on your territory. Don't encroach too much on mine. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Yes.
Did I just say that? I think I
You
did.
did.
But anywho, we'll forget that.
Right.
Tell me about shadow people.
Hmm. So I've seen several different types of shadow people. I've seen
Hmm.
shadow people who are quite literally what it says. They are human spirits who lack the energy to fully manifest as a person. So they show up as
Right.
a shadowy person because it's easier to just be a vague person shaped thing.
Hmm.
It takes less energy. And then I've seen the shadow people that people talk about, the creepy ones, the inky black ones, the ones that aren't people and never were people. Hatman, one of the ones that they talked about when I was in college in undergrad. My other roommate also saw dead people. Made things real fun. But the first time she met me was basically she uh, wanted me to come check out the ghost in her room. And I go in there, and there was the possibly the skinniest and tallest shadow person I've ever seen. It was a teeny tiny thing that looked almost like ink and water, just sort of swirling in on itself, sitting
Hmm.
in the corner of the room, just chilling, doing what he does. And it wasn't a person. It had been invited in by the previous roommate and decided not to leave, essentially. But it wasn't malicious. It was just there. It had no ill intent. That's
Hmm.
not to say that all shadow people fall into that same category. I've met several that were there with the express intent of scaring people to feed off of them or to feed on souls, because some of
Hmm.
them do that because they're,
Hmm.
just how it works.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's just a common thing, almost a tulpa-like idea of showing up as that dark figure to scare people. It's some sort of primordial human fear, I guess.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Now, whether we're talking about shadow people or jinn, fairies, human spirits, would you say protection is important when dealing with any of these within the paranormal field?
I think it is better to protect going into something so that you're not
Okay.
trying to fix it later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just makes your life easier, especially if you know you're going to be going on a ghost hunt or you're going on something that is creeping you out to begin with. If you're giving off that creeped out energy, things that want to feed on you are going to show up. So you may as
Yeah.
well take whatever precautions you feel are appropriate, whether it's a prayer, whether it's sage, whether it's holy water, whatever it is that makes you feel safe and secure grounding, whatever works
Mm-hmm.
for you. You should do it going in so that you don't have an attachment coming out.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I've been doing a whole lot of all of the above recently because again, talking about doing tours in Williamsburg, it's like they come looking for me, and I'm like, guys, look, you can tag along, but you can't attach yourself. You can't come home. You are to stay here. And it's like I've got stones and crystals, and I'm just trying my best to let everybody know we're friends, but I draw the line here. Please
Mm-hmm.
stay.
That's what you have to do.
And right, exactly. And I think there are far too many people who just go do this for the spur of the moment, that thinking, oh, I'll get a quick thrill and I'll go see a ghost, and then next thing they know, they've taken one home with them, and now they don't know how to get rid of it. So I guess they're in turn reach out to someone like yourself and say, please help me, I don't know what I'm dealing with.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, am I right?
And
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, I've got enough weird things that are crawling into people's houses on its own
Hmm.
that I really don't need people bringing them home as pets unless you're intending to keep it as a pet? And I don't suggest
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that. That doesn't sound like the making of a good time. That's for sure. Yeah, yeah. But then again, depends on who you are, I guess. I
Yeah.
won't judge. Yeah. All right. Well, we are pretty much out of time. I'm just curious now. Any future projects in the works? I've looked over your resume. You've done so many great, wonderful things within the illustrious paranormal field. What do you have going on currently?
I'm working on a monograph right now, so I'm hoping to get that finished up and hopefully out to a publisher soonish. So
Okay.
that is the next thing. And there's always projects working on the side, but we don't
Mm-hmm.
talk about those.
Uh, I totally understand. I won't prod any further. Very good. If any of my viewers and or listeners wanted to follow your paranormal adventures, do you have any social media pages or a website even where they can, I guess, sort of stalk you to a certain degree, but not literally?
Right. If you want to see the paranormal stuff, my Instagram is the best place to go. It is at Amarna Marie, AmarnaMarie. I do all the
Okay.
ghosts there. Anybody has any questions about anything, has a haunted kid, demon in your house, whatever, send me a message. That's the best place to get a hold of me.
Okay, fantastic. Everybody heard that, right?
Yes.
She said it. There we go. All right, Stephanie. Well, I am going to call it a wrap. I could easily ask you 1,000 more questions, probably, and pick your brain until the sun comes up, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm simply going to say thank you. It has truly been a pleasure having you here in the Paranormal Corner for Hauntily Yours podcast for the paranormal.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great time, great conversation.
I am glad to hear that. Thank you. Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care. All right, guys. I'm going to sign off. This is DC O'Rourke, Hauntily Yours, a podcast for the paranormal. And this was Paranormal Corner. Be safe, guys.
Oh, great.